Game designers have this habit of fetishizing simplicity. Whether it be in an indie platformer or a card game, the idea of simplicity and ease of understanding has had a slow but steady creep up in importance as the years have gone by. Speaking in terms of indie games, projects that forsake this escalating simplicity end up being incoherent messes of poorly designed textures and even more poorly designed mechanics. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have games that feel like they dive too deeply into minimalism at the cost of fun and depth. Enter Into the Breach, a new indie darling from Subset Games, creator of smash hit FTL Faster Than Light. Following its predecessor's footsteps, Into the Breach is also a roguelike strategy game, but instead takes up the mantle of a turn-based tactics game, reminiscent of titles like Chroma Squad, Fire Emblem, and the DS classic Chessmaster: The Art of Learning. Just like CMTAOL as it's called in the Chessmaster community, Into the Breach uses its rather simple pieces but diverse play environments to create varied gameplay situations that are fun on each playthrough. Unlike in chess, however, you only have access to 3 pieces in the form of your mech squad. You have 8 squads of pre-chosen mechs that each suit a very particular playstyle, and also the ability to make custom squads or choose random squads if you so desire. Now, I really appreciate some mechs. In fact, I love them, more than a friend even. The issue is we just don't get that many mech games anymore. We've had a handful of games in the last 5 years or so of note, but Mecha and AAA has been MIA for a while now. In fact, the only good mech game I can think of in the last bit has been Xenoblade Chronicles X in 2015. It feels like ever since From Software departed from Armored Core to make Armored Bank on the Soul series, the mecha genre in general has been criminally lacking. I'm also a huge tactics fan. Half of this channel has been reviewing tactics games, and I grew up with this guy and FF Tactics, so it's basically a given that I will be hypercritical to a game in this genre. So with that in mind, this is a very personal gripe, but the lack of versatility is what gets me the most about the tactics and the mecha gameplay. Now, in Into the Breach, every part of your team can do a single action, apart from moving and repairing itself, kind of like in chess where each piece has the one function. You can install an additional move on a mech after you clear an island, but it's at a large cost and usually is a waste of resources due to the hyper-specificity of each mech's role. Juxtaposing this with games like Disgaea or FF Tactics, a large part of what makes these tactic games fun is the versatility of action in each turn, due to the fact that you're playing for a larger strategy that can be achieved in many ways. This is reflected in your characters, with them having huge skill sets and persistent power growth while the levels and enemies also get stronger with you. Into the Breach is just different in the fact that it doesn't do tactics like any other tactics game. For one thing, each of Into the Breach's pieces are incredibly simple and for the most part stagnant as the game evolves. Each turn of the game is basically a puzzle, with the enemies attempting to attack your character or the surrounding buildings, and while this is going on, each of your mechs can use their actions to move enemies around the map and manipulate the environment to make sure they don't hit your buildings, basically. The focus is not reaction and fighting the enemies, but prevention of them hitting your buildings, with each turn being a new unique puzzle, and you're just trying to keep your buildings that is, out of harm's way. With that in mind, body blocking, friendly fire, and eventually sorrowful sacrifice all become a core part of keeping your tower safe. As long as you keep your global health bar untouched, everything else is basically forfeit. No longer are you traveling through space in FTL, ducking and dodging rebel ships while slowly building yourself into a one-vessel army. Now you're just solving puzzle after puzzle trying to keep your head above water. Sure, you can make your mech stronger by upgrading their core capacity and increasing their damage, but it's not about making your mech stronger, because right from the get-go, the game gives you everything you need to beat it. Your mechs are already as strong as they will ever have to be. The issue is that your core objective of keeping the tower safe never gets easier or harder. It's always the exact same thing. The game lets you keep building safe in all manners of ways with the different squads, but the second you actually choose your squad, you've chosen how the entire game is going to go. You can talk about the bonus objectives they throw in there for some added spice, which give you bonus money and bonus life at the end of each island, but I just can't help but dislike this core gameplay loop. Rather than developing a playstyle and trying to achieve one of many viable strategies, I feel like I'm forced into doing the same thing turn in, turn out. This gets back to the basics as far as tactics and mech games go, being all about binary opposition between one force and another. This is grossly simplifying the vast genre that is anime chess, but the core principle is always about the fighting. At no point do you actually have to kill the enemies in this game. In fact, you gain very little from doing so if it's at the cost of your towers taking damage, so most of the time there's no point to it. As soon as Into the Breach throws out the window, I just feel like I got catfished. If you love puzzles, then this game will definitely be for you, but that's basically what this game is, a bunch of puzzles in a trench coat. gripes with the gameplay aside, this game's story, pixel art, setting, and music were all top-notch. All of it was just fantastically done, and if nothing else, I would recommend listening to a bit of the soundtrack of the game if nothing else about it interests you. Apart from that, I really do enjoy how this game did the entire roguelike story mechanism. If you think about games like, I guess FTL or The Binding of Isaac, you just sort of start every new playthrough with no in-universe explanation for why you're going through the same loop again, but Into the Breach solves this by throwing in time travel and dimension hopping. Every time you lose or win a run, you get thrown into another timeline that has the exact same issues as this one, where you're trying to fight the aliens. And then you basically get told to go again and save this timeline, or lose this timeline. And that sort of works very well. I was pretty impressed with that for some reason. I'm not sure how important it is, but kind of enjoy stories that make sense with the game mechanics. Don't have any of that ludonarrative dissonance in there. Now, all things considered, this is a good game. By all means, it has good game design, but every turn that passed reduced the dopamine received until I was just clicking out of habit. It doesn't have the evolving complexity in various situations of Fostered in Light, which means this is one I'll probably never come back to after the review. Simply put, I just find this game's gameplay monotonous, which I think is a death sentence for roguelike games. It might be because of how many tactic games I've played, and how few puzzle games I've enjoyed, not named Portal, but something about it just really rubbed me the wrong way. I already have my ideal, perfect mecha tactics game, and that is Super Robot Wars Taisen Original Generation 2 for the Game Boy Advance. If anything in this video sounded like it would irritate you as much as it irritated me, go for that game because it has none of that bullshit. In fact, it's about as simple as tactics game goes. It's just cool animations and robots. That's all I really wanted, to be honest.